Stop on by, stop on by. Stop on by, stop on by. Stop on by, stop on by. Head on over to the Grimerica Chats.
Yoo-hoo!
I started this out by saying I was amazingly naive. I had no idea that this would get on the radar, no pun intended, of somebody like the Navy or the Army or the DoD, which eventually did come knocking.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We're going to be chatting with Denny Unger and Joseph Matheny a little bit later. Matheny. Well, virtual reality and Q-anon and all sorts of what's the word for that sort of gaming?
Well, there was the ironic school of conspiracy, but it was also
It was called something. It's like gaming.
Alternate reality, I think.
Alternate gaming reality, or I don't know. It's crazy stuff. But it's, Graham fucking Beefcake Dunlop. I was going to give you that this week too, and you fucked it up because you came in unannounced. That's okay. Next year. Yeah, I kept asking if he was Q. He did not appreciate that. You're going to get me killed.
No, he's just been called Q before, so.
Well, because he created what was that online sort of weird game he created that everyone thought
Ong's Hat?
Ong's Hat, which everyone thought was like a CIA or some sort of weird thing, or I don't know what the proper word for it is. It's like people thought it was like a movement or like a gateway or a puzzle that you were going to follow to some sort of crazy
it was
end.
A puzzle, yeah.
But it was all just sort of a game, and people were starting to question whether it was real or fake or.
And then, of course, people got too into the game.
Yeah, it always happens.
But it's interesting because this was back in the early 90s before conspiracy was a bad word. So we do talk about that quite a bit as well, the contemporary conspiracy.
Conspiracy is a fucking bad word. I mean, we used to consistently, always, for years, we've been in the top 20, 30 in the philosophy section of iTunes in the US, and we're just wiped from the fucking map now.
Really?
Yeah, we don't even show up.
No way.
Don't show up in the top 200. Maybe the show's just that bad, but I mean...
No.
I don't think so.
It's not growing. It's growing, and we're doing better.
It seems to be growing.
Metrics,
the community's growing. All the metrics are going up.
Who knows?
But, yeah. Tough to say. I'm checking right now, actually.
I was going to say.
Because I did an experiment.
Okay.
So
talk about it.
I changed, because it's always been, I've changed the Grimerica Show, but I changed it in iTunes to the Grimerica Show, Not Your Grandparents' Paranormal Conspiracy Podcast. A little SEO. So because we didn't show up if you search paranormal or conspiracy or anything like that. So I changed the title of that. We started showing up. Then I'm like, maybe conspiracy is a bad word these days. Let's take that out of the title, see what happens.
And you did? Take it out of the title?
Yeah, and I forgot.
Yeah, and you forgot to look?
I forgot
or you forgot to take it out?
I forgot to check.
So now this is the real live checking time?
We are checking on the fly.
So what, did you just take that one word out? That was it? Leave the rest the same?
Yeah, so we're still not on here. So then maybe we're just headed downhill. Maybe this is the end.
Yeah.
So this I believe's on the list. Here Be Monsters. Animal Mind podcast. Or maybe, you know what it could be is so many people are gaming the system now that Hidden Experience is up there still. That are gaming the system, or maybe we need some reviews. Maybe we're just shitty. I think we're okay though.
Yeah, but you were looking in there. You said we have a lot of reviews. I mean, we should almost push for 1,000 as well. We could start that initiative again. Anyways, we got too many other things going on.
Too much stuff on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, our name still says Not Your Grandparents' Paranormal Conspiracy Podcast.
So much for editing that out of there.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it takes a week or two. You know, it took a while to accept the new podcast, 13 Questions. It took them longer than I expected for them to add that to the thing.
Yeah.
Like a week
like you were thinking.
It used to be a day.
You were thinking they're looking at the main feed, the Grimerica, and they're looking at it going, we don't need another one from these guys.
No, I wasn't thinking. I think Apple's a lot of people are making podcasts and then stop doing it. So the average on Libsyn, which is the biggest podcast host on the planet, the average is 7 episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
7.
The average or
you know what's
mean?
funny is
the mean or the average?
What's funny is Truffaut made it to 7.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's up right at the average.
He's right at the
He's
average.
an average guy.
Shout out to Michael. We love you, buddy. We got 374 5 stars in the U.S.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yep. Let's
Of
get
course
that
you-
sucker up to 1,000. I think
Yeah.
the algorithms like multiply if you get this to 1,000.
That's right. Head over to grimerica.ca/iTunes or whatever. Review us, rate us wherever you can, share us wherever you can. Even if you don't watch on YouTube, I think if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, I think our next goal on YouTube is to get to like 10,000 subscribers. We can start getting, I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good goal. Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
do that. We got to might as well, right?
We got to set goals, baby.
Yeah.
10,000. Go fucking subscribe to YouTube, please. What else you got?
I got lots of stuff.
You got lots of stuff?
Yeah.
Can I play a jingle?
Yep.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to start with my stuff this week. I've had enough of your stuff. Actually, let's do this. Get this out of the way.
The PO box.
Oh, shit. This thing ain't working. This is a problem. Can you talk?
Don't mind the
Say
technical troubleshooting as we go here.
Say
I
something.
think
Keep
Darren's
talking.
looking for the PO box jingle because he's got a package from the PO box. I think I know what it is, but it's been a long time coming.
It has?
Yeah.
How do you know it's for me?
Oh, it's got your name on it.
Oh,
It actually says Darren Grimes.
I don't like that for some reason.
Darren Grimes.
For some reason, that makes me nervous.
Yeah. Somebody's picked you out.
I wasn't
sent
going
you
to play
something
that jingle. Though.
specific.
I was actually trying to play the
Social media jingle?
no, the
Down and Graham, going
You
deep.
fucker.
It's a found UFO quote of the week.
How soon you forget.
oh, I don't have a new jingle yet.
Okay, so you know there's no more
Yes.
UFO quotes, right?
Yes,
Profound UFO quote of the
Okay.
week.
but it's a wonderful jingle.
Who said this?
Okay.
For the last 400 years, an unstated assumption of what science is, an unstated assumption of science is that human intention cannot affect what we call physical reality. Our experimental research of the past decade shows that for today's world, and under the right conditions, this assumption is no longer correct.
Rupert Sheldrake.
Close. Dr. William Tiller, former head of the Material Sciences Department at Stanford University.
Damn it. How was I close?
That's pretty good, eh? Oh, it just sounds...
You're just
sounds
being
English.
nice.
He might
You're
be
just a
English.
nice guy. Appreciate it, bud. Here, now we'll do this.
No. I got another. I got
You got another one? Oh, we do one from each book?
Yeah, we do one.
Ooh,
from
this
each
is
book.
fun.
Yeah.
I'm serious about getting the
guess-
Bible in here. I want to do Grimerica Interprets the Bible. We should go through, we'll do a couple passages a week, and we'll give what we
The Book
think
of
it
Enoch
says.
or the real.
Let's do the Book of Enoch first. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, this is applicable.
Is this how cults get started?
Are you really wanting to become a religious so we don't have to pay tax?
No, I just want to see.
It's a
I haven't
slippery
read
slope.
No, I know. I haven't.
It's a slippery slope between like becoming a religion and then ending up a cult. I mean, how do you stop that? From
I don't want to become a religion first and foremost.
Grimerica.
I just haven't. I haven't read the Bible since I'm a kid. I don't really remember most of it.
You know, you're going to be bored after the first couple of pages. You'll be like, "This, we've enough of this segment." It'll be one of those. We started up and then it fizzles out right away. Like, let's just finish the
Is it
reading that
boring?
we're doing on the Black Budget.
Oh fuck yeah, we should.
We
do
should
that.
just finish that.
But I'm talking about for the real segment. Okay, how about you just send your favorite Bible passages to Graham and we'll tell you what we think.
Actually, some of the passages are kind of cool.
I think they are. I think
yeah.
we could totally redefine what the Bible means.
Okay.
But I don't want to be a cult. I just want to check it out.
So this is applicable to this podcast with Denny and Joseph because they talk about conspiracies and fake conspiracies and real conspiracies and alternative reality games. So who said this? We used to laugh at conspiracy theorists. But from FIFA to banking scandals to the Iraq war, it seems they may have been onto something after all. You'd have your mate who after a few beers would tell you that the moon landings were faked, or that the Illuminati controlled everything, or that the U.S. government was holding alien autopsies in Area 51, and you would be able to dismiss this because it was all rubbish. It's true that there was always the big one, which wasn't quite so easily dismissed. This was the Kennedy assassination. But here you could be fairly sure that the whole thing was a terrible, impenetrable, murky morass. You knew that some things never would be known and never would be released, partially redacted by the CIA 200 years in the future. And you knew, whatever the truth was, it was probably a bit dull compared to your mate's flights of fancy involving the KGB, the Mafia, and the military-industrial complex. Besides, it all made for a lot of very entertaining films and books. This nice, cozy state of affairs lasted until the early 2000s, after Ong's hat. No, I'm just kidding. I just threw that in there. But then something changed. These conspiracy theories don't look so crazy, and conspiracy theorists don't look like crackpots. In fact, today's conspiracy theory is tomorrow's news headlines. It's tempting, I suppose, to say that we live in a golden age of conspiracy theories, although it is only really golden for the architects of the conspiracies. From the Iraq War to FIFA to the banking crisis, the truth is not only out there, but it is more outlandish than anything we could have made up.
That is government.
Alex Proud from The Telegraph in 2016.
I would have never fucking guessed that. I don't even know who Alex Proud is.
That's what this segment's going to be like. I mean,
sounds like a hate group. That's okay. I'll do my best.
He's been unintentionally banned off of social media because of the algorithm.
Really? We should come up with a term for those people. He's like an algorithm refugee.
Get out a pen and paper and write this down. Or a pencil.
Or a pencil.
Why don't you send some physical mail to the Grimerica Show? At P.O. Box 16033. Next line. 100-815, comma, 17th Avenue, SW. Next line.
What are you doing?
I'm reading the return address.
Next line. Canada.
But that's not a real return address.
Space,
It's just the manufacturer.
That's the P.O. Box.
I get a little nervous opening these packages sometimes. I get less nervous when they're like from it's like, remember you put that disc in your computer's never really been the same. We never really figured out what was on that
I know,
disc.
where is that disc?
I don't know.
Give it to the handler and see.
Let's give. Oh, what do we got?
Oh, that's not what I thought it was. I predict it's
you know what?
Canadian flag with the pot leaf on it.
This is off of the... Someone bought this off of Amazon, I bet.
Is there a note there?
There's a note from the guy who made the shirt.
Oh, it's a shirt?
From the guy that made the flag. Please leave a 5-star feedback and I will do the same.
Sweet.
There's no note. But it's a Canadian pot leaf flag. The unboxing.
Show the camera.
Remember we were saying we were going to start an unboxing channel? People send us a bunch of stuff. We'll just open it up, throw it in the dumpster.
Open it up. Opened it up.
Fuck you, Dunlop. Ooh, it's huge.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Hang it over the banner. We could hang it in between us. I don't have to look at you.
Good
You
job,
don't have
buddy.
to breathe in my smoke.
Yeah, that's nice. That's for a green room.
You're a dork. So now, okay. What do you got? Do you want me to play a jingle?
It's up to you, dude. Whatever you want.
I'm going to do what I want this show. Not even think about it.
Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the Grimerica
We're not reading flat Earth comments yet, right?
Oh no, let's leave that because I have an email to read about that.
Over 100. Okay, we got on the Del Bigtree Vaccine Truth episode.
Oh boy.
Thanks for the great show, guys. Here's a little more on the aluminum issue that is discussed at about the 36-minute mark. People who compare ingested to injected toxicity that don't understand the difference between injected toxins versus ingested toxins. Here is an example of why toxins injected with vaccines are worse than ingesting toxins. The aluminum in vaccines is 0.03% absorbed when it is ingested. Aluminum is 45% adult to 65% neonate absorbed when it is injected. Since aluminum has a half-life of 7 years in the body, the aluminum in the vaccine schedule is very cumulative. This pattern holds to almost all toxins because 70% of our immune system is in our guts, and compounds such as aluminum are bound by silica in the food and go right through. You can, after all, drink the same amount of snake venom that would kill you from a bite relatively safely. Vaccine pushers need to stop comparing injected to ingested toxicity because it makes them look stupid. These toxins add up, especially when they are taken in highly absorbed injected form. When the child is premature or the child has an impaired detox pathways, every one of them gets a child closer to the tipping point. This is particularly true when a child is given a series of catch-up vaccines all at once. P.S. Have you looked into synergistic toxicity? Synergistic toxicity makes the vaccine ingredients more dangerous. This is when that's like the polysorbate 80 that helps the aluminum get into the brain. This is that's his example actually. This happens because a vaccine ingredient such as polysorbate 80 opens up the blood-brain barrier. Another example is that mercury and aluminum have a synergistic toxicity. These effects are in addition to factors such as an aluminum load that exceeds FDA standards. This video examines the amount of aluminum in the first 18 months of the vaccine schedule and compares it to FDA regulations. Sherry. There's a video there. It's on the YouTube. It's in the comments of the Del Bigtree YouTube episode. If you guys want to check out that video. We got more flat Earth.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, it's crazy. They've taken over the place. It's about 50-50. It's a lot of fighting. That's what I don't like about flat Earth. You know what came with a lot of flat Earth that there's not a lot of in Grimerica? Fighting.
Yep, and that's probably why we avoided it for years.
Sticks out now on Seth's Breedlove. I'm with you on not shooting Bigfoot. That's like murder in my opinion. Anytime I've heard someone blasting one with a shotgun, it never kills it anyway.
Exactly.
They just shake it off or morph out of sight or something of that sort. I remember Mysterious Universe, some Russian guy once allegedly pulled a Bigfoot out of the river in a storm and possibly saved its life. A lot of good Bigfoot accounts given by MU over the years.
Yeah.
I actually emailed Grundy today.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's good, eh?
Yep.
Okay, what do you got? Can I play a jingle?
Well, do you remember, play the trip report jingle.
All right.
But it's not really a trip report. It's an analysis of the compound after the fact here. Oh, I like that.
Oops. I thought we had another trip report jingle. Didn't we have two? Didn't we have... I don't see it here.
So, do you remember? Not too long ago, I read Mark's email of where he took it was a LSD analog called DOI, and he spent like a whole week of his life living semi-conscious on the couch for around 3 hours.
No.
And he was talking about how he could actually see auras around everything and electric lights, and like you could see, what was it again? You could see things faster, like different speeds and stuff than normal, and different quality. It is what you were confirming that you do when you're in a psychedelic state where you can see things happening at a different rate.
Mm-hmm.
So then he says, he just sent a follow-up email. He says, after emailing you, I went back to reread that Wikipedia article about DOI and noticed some interesting things, particularly this. Now I'm sort of stuck on, because he took a potent one as well. Oh, heightened senses is really what he says.
Interesting.
Yeah. The most interesting phenomena, however, was incredibly heightened senses. And you kind of confirmed that.
I've noticed that from time to time.
So DOI
Allegedly
has also been shown to induce rapid growth and reorganization of dendritic spines and synaptic connections with other neurons. So that's a process known to underlie neuroplasticity.
What's DOI?
That's the compound, the analog compound of LSD. I don't want to try and pronounce it again. It's dimethoxy 4-iodimethylphenidine, something like that.
So that's the synthetic. It's still synthetic, though. Is there a natural version? Where's L? I thought there's a natural version of LSD. Anyway.
This makes sense to me as before I took it, I was struggling at school, had non-existent social skills, which I later found out was linked to an undiagnosed autism. After I started experimenting with DOI, it really helped me in those areas, and I attribute my experience with drugs like DOI and MDMA as turning my more severe autism earlier in life into mild Asperger's I have today. And now I'm studying archaeology and environmental science at uni with high grades, inspired by JRE podcasts with Randall and Graham. As for my female friends seeing auras, I was involved in my local rave scene for a while, and I made friends with a woman who claimed she sees auras full-time, even while sober, and both descriptions of auras were very much the same. Here's a link to the news story about the drug back when I was taking them. So there's a news story about how there's a drug warming in Adelaide about this super LSD they're calling it. It's true that the effects of the trip were extensive. There was a common joke among the people I knew who took them: stop the bus, I want to get off. Visual, auditory effects, and muscular effects continued for a full day or two. And it was hard to sleep while under the influence of these effects. Muscles and legs were the worst part. It led to cramps sometimes. My experiences with DOI, especially those superhuman hearing abilities, have profoundly opened my mind to what's possible and to the notion that there are things that science can't or won't explain.
Bum, bum, bum. Like placebo.
There you go.
There you have it.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder what they've been experimenting. Remember they were doing all those LSD experiments on people, right? I wonder how many analog types and types of stuff they were doing to try and create super soldiers and all that.
Think?
Yeah.
Are you a super soldier?
Not even close.
Are you like an early generation one? Or are you like a mediocre soldier?
No.
No? You're a super lover? I'll get a smile out of him. What else you got? Synchronicity?
No, I got a support email.
Ooh, I like support.
Greetings, guys. I'm in the 99 plus percentile of your loyal listeners who regularly plug you into your humbly presented top shelf podcast broadcasts.
That's not a support email. That's an I don't support email.
Furthermore, it has formed into a habit. I am fairly, unfortunately, tribal when it comes to my listening loyalties. About 6 I always listen to but never support. I can easily justify it. My financial situation is hand to mouth. However, Devil's Advocate always delighted in sharing his pesky perspectives on everything I take the time to take a stand on. Being poor in America? It's not as much fun as having money to burn in America, but as a piss-poor American without financial support obligations over another, nor obligated to medical financial obligations, I cannot take a bird's eye view of my financial spreadsheet for the month and continue to stand by my too poor to support stand. Like most piss-poor Americans, at least 2 or 3 days, minimum, depends on the time of year, I am a 2-cent millionaire. I have some mad money. If I don't allot a budgeted amount to waste, I'll waste all of it, and I don't even know why. I know you get plenty of excuses. I'm not sure what you're going to do with another one, lest it were coupled with a useful suggestion. I hope that you get that email from someone today. Enough said, Ryan Johnson. P.S. Question. Have you ever ruled out running a money bomb for some reason. Part of me that continues to justify his lack of support on above listed excuses would love to see one directed at the 99 plus percentile who have never supported any financial manner. My top excuse that tips me into remaining with the popular crowd is, what the hell would another dollar do anyhow? Anywho, I can justify not subscribing on the more useful monthly pledge, but cannot opt out of an upcoming money bomb of such nature announced in advance with at least 2 weeks warning. That's interesting about the warning. We should keep that in mind for any things.
We cannot start giving away money.
I'd actually get off my broke, lazy podcast directed ass and rise to the challenge of seeing what my dollar could do in such an environment. Sorry, such a long email. I know you don't get excited about those. Love you both like family. Love not being able to choose a favorite between you two. Love your show 95% of the time. Hope you money bomb in the new year. Peace out. 32nd level Dungeon Master.
You'll be Team Graham in a minute. So he's been willing to support the show if we gave some of it to someone else?
You want the money bomb, the 50-50 money bomb.
Oh, we can't start doing that. We're in no position to be giving away money. Sorry.
What do you mean? Well, the money bomb is not, you don't give away money. You give away half.
If we give away half, we were out on our ass.
Well, are we rolling out the cabin ticket?
Oh, yeah. We should do that.
So we do have a way
I thought that was like rolling into, I thought we had like the perfect segue into CAC, and then you jumped in with this email, which was like the perfect segue into the support. You've ruined two perfectly good segues.
It's a double segue. Since there's a support and the CAC. So for Ryan, who doesn't want to donate without some possibility of something in return, if he subscribes within the next month and he wants to, he can be...
Oh, that's right. He can get signed up for CAC.
See,
Graham's CAC. Randall's CAC. Sorry. Grimerica's CAC, really. Our event in May.
It's been a long night.
Yeah, we're just getting started. Oops. May 17th to May 27th in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. We're running 3 events. The first weekend sold out with a waiting list.
No, the last weekend.
The last weekend sold out with a waiting list, the 23rd to the 27th. There is still space left in both the 17th to the 20th and the 20th to the 23rd slots. That'll include a live podcast. Graham's going to do some CSETian, weather dependent.
CE5. Yeah.
CE5. We're going to have a Wim Hof guy coming out to the first weekend. And
one of his top trainers.
One of his top trainers. He's going to teach us some Wim Hof exercises. We can do that. There'll be an option in the morning for people who want to partake. And then, of course, we'll have one day where we do some presentation and some Q&A with Randall. We'll do some fireside stuff, some percussion stuff, some chatting by the fire, all that fun stuff. And we're going to go out on a couple tours. Well, each group will get one tour. So we'll go to Tour Mesa Verde, someplace like that. We'll provide you with breakfast and lunch while you're there. You're on your own for dinner. We'll provide you with breakfast, lunch, transportation. So check out, it's all there at badcomet.com. You really do got to go check it out. I know Randall is going on Conspiracy Farm on Monday. I actually just got a text from Greg Carlwood. He's even going to be going on, THC in the next couple of weeks. So the last 30 or so spots that are left are about to be blown wide open. That's another 100,000 people or more right there that are about to get the memo. There's probably some crossover and all that, but it's definitely going out to the next level with shows like that. So you're going to want to check it out. badcomet.com. We'll probably, that's a good question, Ian. We're humming and hawing about what sort of digital presence we're doing. We're going to be doing some live shows from there. We'll live stream whenever we can. And we might end up with some sort of digital something or other. We're still humming and hawing about how that's going to work. If we can do something like that, we will. It's just tough to commit to. We're not sure what it'll look like or how it's going to go. What we can tell you is if you sign up to support the show or you're a supporter of the show at any level, if you're a previous supporter, you're already a supporter and you want to be entered, we don't want to just draw names for everybody because people might not be able to fly. They might be able to get time off. There's people all over the world. We don't know who's where. So if you're a supporter of the show, email Adam your email address, adam@grimerica.com, and he's keeping a tally. So anyone who signs up, a current supporter or anyone who signs up for the show between now and April 20th, will be entered in the draw, and then Randall's going to come on the show with us, and we're going to pick one of those supporters. We'll figure out something. We're going to do a draw out of all the names of all the people who want to do it. And one of our supporters, I mean, you're going to have to get yourself there still, but we'll give you a free ticket. We'll give you a free bed. Not even a tent. It's a bed. It'll be a bunk bed.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's a bunk bed? Okay, cool.
So we're going to do that for one of our supporters.
How do they let us know?
Email adam@grimerica.com.
Did you say that already?
Yeah. So if you're a current supporter or you sign up tomorrow or sign up whenever at grimerica.ca/support, sign up for a monthly, you get access to the black budget, all that stuff. You get a clean conscience. You feel good about yourself. The world will probably seem like a better place. And now if you want and you're keen on going on the trip, but you can't afford it and you can get yourself there.
Or if you're Ryan and you want to maybe raffle, you want to scalp the ticket later. Ryan, sign up now. This is the time.
Who's Ryan?
The email I just read.
Oh, yeah.
This is the time. This is the time. Sign up. You win the draw.
Scalp it.
You got a number, then you wait till the last minute, and everybody's trying to get to this event, and you can sell it for like $5 or $10,000.
Yeah, there you go. There's the plan. There's too many Ryans already anyway. No, it's worth it. So that's just how we're going to help out. We like to give back to our supporters, and so if one of you can't afford to get there, maybe you can afford to get yourself there, but you can't afford that plus the ticket. So email adam@grimerica.com. You'll be on that list. Above, you can only be on that list once, of course. Above and beyond that, we're going to raffle off a tent spot for the 20th to the 23rd slot.
Oh, are we? We're going to do that too?
Should we wait?
No, it's okay. If we're going to do it, we got to do it now. But so we're going to raffle up.
Yeah, we'll do 30 tickets. One's not a raffle. One's just a giveaway.
Okay. This is a raffle.
This is a raffle.
So this is like the 50-50 that Mike wanted, or Ryan wanted.
It's like $20 a spot, 30 tickets.
$20 a spot, 30 tickets?
Yeah.
Is there only 30 tickets? Or why do we don't limit it? A raffle.
If we do that, we'll go to another one. It's not a making money thing. So we'll go up to the value of the ticket.
This could help our expenses.
We'll go up to the value of the ticket and we'll go on to another one.
What's the point of that?
Well, then we're just selling tickets and giving people a chance to go for $20 instead of $500.
Oh, that sounds a lot of work for no extra money for us.
See, this is where the greed comes out. I don't see it. You're always like fighting me on trying to get money out of people. And I'm like, hey, man, we're just a racket.
Well, when it's a raffle, the ceiling's supposed to be like, there's no ceiling.
Well, I think there's a word for we're like see how
it's
great
a raffle, not a racket.
This is a great raffle. This is like next level raffle. It's a limited seating raffle,
exactly,
VIP raffle.
It doesn't go over the price of a ticket.
Well, it goes over by $100, enough to cover the transaction fees and stuff.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're not losing money.
Okay, we're not losing money on it. Okay, I don't want to lose money on that deal.
We lose enough money. Now this guy wants us to give half of it away. It's his PayPal. We'll just send it over.
So does that guy that gives us $20, and he's never donated to the show before, he gives us $20. Does he get entered in that other one automatically too? I guess so, right? Well, he's a new supporter.
Not if he's buying a ticket for the raffle. He's buying that from Adam. It's set up separately.
Okay.
Don't send us the $20. Email Adam. We can't just run it through our PayPal. So we got to set it up.
Oh, okay. It's going that way.
Yeah. Okay. We got to set it up. We can't don't just send us $20. You don't send anyone any money yet. Just email Adam and say what you want to do.
You got to subscribe to the show.
Well, if you're going to support the show. I mean for the raffle. Don't send money for the raffle yet. Email Adam and say if you want to do the raffle.
Yeah.
We haven't figured out which PayPal account we're going to send it to yet. I don't want to start mixing stuff up.
Yeah.
Especially if we have to give this guy.
Yeah.
We don't want to be giving him CAC money. Sorry, Ryan. Just teasing. Anyway, what else you got?
That's about it.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah.
We got the CAC covered.
Yeah.
We got the support. We got the begging for support covered.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's enjoy this awesome conversation with Danny and Joseph.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Enjoy.
All right, we got a real fun one for you guys tonight. You might have heard Denny Unger was on a few years back, but Denny Unger's back with his friend Joseph Matheny. And Denny Unger, we're going to be talking a little bit about his conspiracy website, Dark Planet, from the early 90s. And Denny also is CEO and creative director of Cloudhead Games. They develop virtual reality games. And Joseph Matheny, we'll let him talk a little bit more about himself, but he's basically an internet litterbug as well from the ironic school of conspiracy. And he, we're going to get into all kinds of sort of deep conspiracy stuff from the 90s. And he's also got a website there as well we'll talk about. And so, thanks for coming on, guys. Really appreciate you guys making the time to come with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Good to see you again, Denny.
Thanks. My connection is weird, so I'll try to phase in and phase out as appropriate.
So, I mean, there's so much to get into here. There's like digging into your stuff about this Ong's hat conspiracy and what you guys got into. I mean, Danny, you kind of got into it a little later, I believe, than Joseph, but Joseph was kind of at the genesis of this whole thing, and it's pretty confusing for me to try and follow, like what's true and what's not. And now we're in this age where conspiracy is a bad word, and there's a whole bunch of conspiracies that we know are true that used to, 10, 15 years ago, you would have thought we were crazy. And that's even coming from, more focus on these places that remind me of Ong's hat, like the East Ranch or the Skinwalker Ranch, these places that kind of now are like almost like contemporary versions of that. So I kind of want to leave this up to you guys of where you want to go. But maybe we should maybe just get Joseph to do a quick little background on yourself and how you guys kind of connected, and then we can go from there. Does that sound good?
Hello?
Does that sound good?
Yeah. I'm getting a lot of audio dropouts, so if I don't hit my cues, just kind of wave both arms at me or something.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, I'm a technologist. I'm an old man. I go all the way back to the early 90s, even the late 80s, actually, where I was running bulletin board systems. Worked in Silicon Valley during the first .com ramp up and explosion, and then kind of worked my way still there during the Web 2.0 era, if you remember that ancient thing. Now I'm kind of semi-retired, and I just do game development on contract, and that's kind of my background. So I guess the Ong's hat thing was, I was talking to Denny earlier about this. A lot of people ask me like what it is, and that's a hard question to answer, because basically what it was is it was a Swiss Army knife that grew out of a bunch of different things I was interested in the late 80s, early 90s. And I kind of just stuck them all together to see if this new thing could come out of it, which was, at the time, internet access was brand new to the public. And I was seeing the first iterations of the web, and I was thinking that this would be an awesome storytelling platform. But more importantly, because so many people could be involved in real time, this could also be an experiment in synchronicity induction. Could we come together and create something, or kind of create something, if we were all thinking about it and believing in it hard enough? And so from that grew a 10-year experiment of seeding these documents, doing interviews, doing a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff, publishing magazine articles, putting together some of the very early primitive artificial intelligence and bots, and just kind of making this machine. I called it the meta machine, that kind of ran this storyline. And, I think was successful in a lot of ways, not so successful in other ways, but that's because I think it was new. And it utilized very heavily tropes from conspiracy theory, which at the time, Danny and I were talking about this again earlier, came out of the left for me. It's really not now, but back then it was like part of the whole being a leftist back then was like you also
counterculture, kind of
counterculture, Kennedy assassination, conspiracy theory, UFOs, all this stuff. And there was a Church of the Subgenius, Discordianism. There was all this stuff kind of blended into the culture, at least the counterculture.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like pushed it all together into this storyline, and then utilized this new free, essentially, publishing platform called the internet that I could reach more people than I could if I was publishing a print zine.
Yeah.
And just kind of went with that and built in elements of gamification into it so that it would actually play like an infinite game and not a finite game, where in theory, the gameplay on this could go on and go on forever. And the fact that there was just an article a couple days ago on Gizmodo tells you that it's still going, even though I've long since called it quits. It just kind of kept going on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I didn't mention in the intro is the alternative reality game part of it, this gamification. And now it's got me thinking about all kinds of, what are all these other conspiracies? I mean, part of our Black Budget feed, I'm reading this paper on conspiracies from Harvard, from Cass Sunstein, and he's writing about how the government is supposed to deal with these conspiracies and whether they should, induct themselves into it and spread disinformation, or should they ignore it, or should they try and fight against it. And I mean, the ones they mention are real conspiracies. I mean, they're not even argued about. We're talking about, 9/11 and some other bad examples of, now that we're reading the paper like 10 or 11 years later, about conspiracies. So now it's got me thinking of, especially hearing all of your stuff there. But were you originally thinking about synchronicity induction at the start of this?
Yeah, I was. I had observed that if you had a group of people that were all focused together on some sort of immersive reality, I'd seen this time and time again because I was also involved in LARPing, and I was involved in ritual magic and a lot of different things and early conspiracy theory in the 80s, watching people get really deep into something, and then synchronicities about that something started appearing. And at first I was like, well, of course, it's observer effect. They're going to think they're seeing things. But then I started actually experiencing it with some of these people. And I'm like, okay, there's something here, but I don't know what it is. And it's that the universe is somehow being responsive. And can I do something to kind of invite that to happen? And can we use game theory to do that? And I went back to the history of games, which actually, had a very sacred origin. And then turned into theater, and then turned into games. But games haven't always been what we call games, in the sense that they weren't pointless recreation or even just recreation. Games had a very deep symbolic meaning, and there was almost a ritual aspect to them at one point. And I think we've kind of lost that to a little bit. I mean, it's always going to be there whether we like it to be or not, but we've lost kind of the knowledge of that. And so I was trying to get back to some of that, where if we're all acting these roles, and now in alternate reality gaming, that's called the TNAG principle. This is not a game, where even though you all know you're playing a game, you don't talk about the fact that you're playing a game because you're doing suspension of disbelief, which, is a magical principle in a lot of ways. So if you've ever done ritual magic, you know that there's this thing called talismata, where you are projecting the essence of something. You see it in your mind. You have all these aspects of it attached to it conceptually, and that's what makes it come to life. And I've experienced these things.
Yeah.
So I was trying to drag that over into the gaming world and then drag that all online. And like I said, there were successes and failures, but to a large part, I think there was a lot of success, because without me telling people that was one of the aspects of the game that I was trying to reach, people started reporting to me that was one of the aspects of the game that they were experiencing.
Yeah, and from my perspective, being a conspiracy nut at that time, that I was running Dark Planet
developer.
Yeah, but at the time, I was taking this stuff kind of at face value. Well, at least kind of entering into it with that agreement. So the Inky Nebula and Ong's Hat were a real thing, and I was trying to kind of dig down into it and figure out, what was real and what wasn't about the story, and so many other people were at that time. One thing that it's hard, I mean, because it's been 20 plus years since this whole thing happened. This was quite a big deal when it first kind of came to light, the whole Inky Nebula thing. And what made it so slippery was that it merged a lot of facts and a lot of real events with a lot of stuff that wasn't real. And unraveling that from my side was a really interesting journey, because you're trying to dig down to the bottom of it. And every time you would find some piece of it that was not true, or you could tell that it was a piece of fiction, it was always sort of counterbalanced with a piece of fact. But that was by design, which was really interesting, and kind of coming to terms with what the material was part of the journey. And in doing that, that also kind of drove a lot of kind of co-creation and synchronicity stuff in the mix of like discovering what it was and what it meant, which is really interesting. We Joseph and I have talked a lot about this, about what kind of co-creation means and how that can drive synchronicity and sort of the malleability of reality. So, the point of the Inky Nebula was really, sorry, I shouldn't speak for Joseph, but for me, looking at it from the outside, it was like, how do we create a narrative that feels real? And then how much of that shared belief is going to make this thing real? And that was where it kind of got spooky. And that's where it got really interesting for me.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Tulpas and the Slender Man and the people.
Yeah, Tulpas definitely. That definitely was some inspiration there.
Yeah.
Can I make like a little Tulpa helper? So he's just like, we could use like a little Tulpa, Tulpa cat.
You don't want to get in that type of magic. Cat? You don't want to get in. That's pretty serious.
Really?
Deep magic. Yeah, you don't want to be summoning stuff.
No.
You can help, right, Joseph? We don't want to be getting into that.
Yeah, Tulpas are extraordinarily eccentric and sometimes get mean.
Yeah, they're hard to control.
Yeah, the deeper the more they become real, the harder they are to control, and you can't get rid of them. It's really hard to get rid of them.
See,
so the reports say. I've never actually experienced.
No, I was going to say, do you have any Tulpas running around?
Well, you can't get rid of Ong's hat; it's still around. So,
well, now I have another story. If you don't mind me, like veering off a little bit.
Sure.
Like around one of the things that happened to me that made me embark on this experiment was in the 1985, I want to say, maybe 84. I was still living in Chicago at the time, and Robert Anton Wilson, who I eventually became friends with, was giving a lecture, and I met him after the lecture, and we talked for a long time out front. He bummed some cigarettes off of me. He was still secretly smoking. Arlen didn't know, but he was bumming cigarettes off me. And we talked about all kinds of stuff. And he found out that I was interested in programming. He got really interested in talking to me. And he actually said, "Have you read Valis by Philip K. Dick yet?" And at the time, 1984, that book was out of print. It did come back strong when Phil got popular as he is now. But like for a long time, you couldn't find it. So I went on this journey to find Valis, and I was going used bookstore to used bookstore. I was working my way through the phone book, if you remember those things. And eventually I found this used bookstore that looked like it was closed. I knocked on the door, and somebody answered. It was a little old lady, really nice, very short, blonde, white hair, very piercing blue eyes. And I told her what I was looking for, and she said, "Matter of fact, I have 2 copies of that." Great. So we go through these musty boxes of books, no bookshelves, just boxes of books. And the windows are newspapered over. And it's like, this place has been closed, but she's there. And we go through the books, and she finds these 2 copies, and she asked me which one I want. There's a hard copy and a paperback. And I chose the paperback. And then she goes, there's 3 parts to this. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. She goes, well, I have part 2 as well. And she gets Divine Invasion. And she holds up 2 copies, and there's a hardback and a paperback, and I chose the hardback. And she's holding this paperback. She goes, "Are you sure?" I'm like, yeah. So I took the hardback. Well, later I had a change of heart and decided I should have taken both. So I went back to get the paperback because I knew there was something special about that paperback. And she didn't answer the door, and I kept knocking. And this was like a couple days later. And I look up, and the house, it's the first story of a house. There's like a shop, and then 2 stories up, which are living spaces. And there's a guy leaning over the rail, and he goes, "Can I help you?" Like this yuppie dude. And I'm like, yeah, I was looking for the lady who runs the bookshop. And he got a weird look on his face. And he's like, "That bookstore hasn't been open for years, man. I don't know what you're playing at, but get the F out of here." And so I tried to talk to him, and he got really angry and went in and slammed the door. So I left. And I'd never found the bookstore open again after that. So I puzzled on that for years. And I described the cover of this paperback to lots of people that knew Philip K. Dick. They told me that book never existed. Well, in 1996 or 7, when the internet became searchable, I found the cover of that book. It's a very rare paperback, but it did exist. So that's my story. I don't know who she was. Maybe she was a random person that was like camping out in there. I mean, there's all kinds of rational explanations for this.
Yeah.
But on the face of it, that was a magical experience.
Yeah, but just for somebody to know in a bookstore full of books like that Valis is there, that's pretty extraordinary.
I mean, she had to know that stock.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I said, the books were just piled up in boxes. There was no shelving system at all. Yeah. So, I mean, take that at face value. But that was an experience that literally put me on this trail of like, can that happen again? What happened there? And can I, is there anything that we can do to make stuff like that happen more often? Because that really touched me. That was a magical experience. And that made the reading of that book for me a magical experience in itself. Like, because that book had become special.
Yeah.
It was an icon. It was a totem of some sort.
Yeah. That's a great book.
So
it was.
So yeah, that's like more of the same sort of.
We had book synchronicities with a lot of guests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, and like the manifestation of things, you know, it's just semi-surreal sometimes.
So I think
it kind of gets into the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, finish off. Go.
I was just going to say, I mean, it kind of gets into the many worlds theory and again, kind of the creation of realities based on your perception of reality. And like, what's so interesting about Ong's Hat and Inky Nebula, or what was interesting to me, was that Joseph kind of infused all of the material with that stuff, and coming at it from like conspiracy paranormal dude head space was like, okay, maybe this is real. Maybe there was some scientist at Princeton that did this thing, and then they went to this hippie cult in the Pine Barrens, and they really did do these experiments with how to travel to alternate realities. And I'm sorry, we're like, people have to get into this to really understand what it was, but that was where sorry,
and you should maybe describe that, because it's not going to sound so crazy. It's not going to sound so crazy now either, really, with all the stuff that's been going on. So, like, why don't you describe the Ong's Hat and then the Inky Nebula part of it, so people can get a little bit of background on that too.
Well, the Inky Nebula was a book catalog that was made up of a lot of real books and some not as real yet books, although some of those manifested over time, oddly enough. And that was part of the experiment. Is, you know, can we make some of these things happen by having a lot of people focusing on this? It was a book catalog, short story, basically, that was disguised as a book catalog, where each of the story points was a book, and the book descriptions were the chapters, basically. And that moves you through this story about this Ong's Hat ashram, which was made up equal part of mystics and scientists from Princeton who were seeking a method to penetrate into parallel dimensions, and discovered that through the mixture of mysticism, drugs, sex, and science, they were able to do that. And then Ong's Hat, which is where this supposedly happened, was also the second part, which was one of those fictitious catalogs that was actually created and then circulated as well. I've heard from different people that it shows up at there was a restaurant in Ong's Hat for a while, and it used to show up there all the time. People were copying this and putting it into like the tourist racks. The Lebanon State Forest Ranger Station, which is right there by Ong's Hat, said that they were constantly finding the copies of that brochure in the racks for their material. You know, like what's around here and the maps and all that kind of stuff. I don't know who was doing that. It wasn't me. And that's the really great thing about this is it was a grassroots movement, and it kind of got picked up as a legend. And to this day, Denny and I were talking, there are groups of teenagers that make pilgrimages out there, you know, and it's called legend tripping, and they go out looking for the ashram. And nobody ever finds anything, but they find things that might have been the ashram. And if you watch the videos, it's on YouTube. It's kind of endearing, and it reminds me of the stuff that we used to do when we were kids, where we would go out to this one place where, if you put your car in neutral and put baby powder on your bumper, you know, your car will roll, and then you'll see little handprints on the powder. You know, everybody has stories like that. There was always a local legend, and it was always a great thing to do as teenagers. You know, to go out, and of course, you're probably also going to be drinking beer and smoking pot and having sex with things like that. But you know, there was a premise for why you were going to the woods, at least. And it was always something spooky because teenagers love spooky. I mean, everybody knows that. I did, didn't you?
Yeah,
Joseph, talk about the means of travel, because that was always an interesting part of the whole mythos to me, was the travel egg and how the technology is centered around how you would travel to an alternate parallel Earth.
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, basically, it was a combination of technology and mysticism. So you basically, the best way to do it would be with two people in the device. So you were having tantric sex while you were probably high on drugs, while you were focusing very intently on screens that were showing fractals with, you've been through a period of time where you were pre-programmed to think about this parallel dimension that you were aiming for. And you might not hit that one, but you'd hit one close, and those kind of things. And then you could come back, supposedly, if you knew how to do it. So it was, it was in an age of right at the cusp of where quantum physics was talking enough language that sounded like mysticism, that some of the diehard scientism people were starting to say, well, maybe there is something to holism. Maybe there is something to thinking outside the box. Maybe everything's not just material and Cartesian and finite. And we started thinking about entanglement and spooky things at a distance, and like all this language that started coming into physics that sounded like they were coming out of the mouths of a guru sitting in an ashram somewhere.
Yeah. Was the Pear Labs in Princeton a thing back then?
Yeah.
Yep.
In fact, the guy who ran that, Roger Nelson, he called those devices that he was using to gather information an egg, EGG.
Yeah, that's right.
And one of those on the network was actually called Ong's Hat, which I got a big kick out of when I found out, because I became acquainted with Roger through Ralph Abraham, the chaos mathematician who I knew in Santa Cruz. And then Ralph, of course, knew Roger and then put us in touch. And I thought, he said, there's one called Ong's Hat on the network. I'm like, what? And then when I ran one of the eggs for a while on one of my computers, and I could see the network, and I saw it. And I thought that was great. I thought that was awesome. Somebody had a sense of humor.
Yeah. So, Denny, do you want to talk a little bit about that and when you first encountered that, and then how you started up Dark Planet and all that?
I mean, Dark Planet was always just a generalist conspiracy site. Lots of UFO stuff. I've always been obsessed with UFO stuff, but I don't actually remember. Oh, sorry. There was a website, a really weird website that it was kind of like an art project website that kind of presented you with a puzzle that you kind of click through, and you'd kind of go several levels deeper and explore this weird website with fractals and weird poetry and chaos science and a bunch of weird bullshit. And in fact, Joseph, I never even talked to you about that original website, or whether you had any affiliation with it, but I assume not, because it was really strange. And it took me a week to get through this website. And it was all about exploring these weird fractals that you'd have to click through. And they would lead you to different paths of information. There'd be like a weird little sonnet or poem about, the nature of reality, or, or how multi-layered it was. And it took me about a week to get through this weird kind of art installation website. And that actually led me to my first link about the Inky Nebula and Ong's Hat. Somebody had put a lot of effort and energy into this thing, whatever it was. And obviously not many people were going to get through it, because you had to be pretty tenacious to go through that weird experience. Anyways, that led me to Ong's Hat and the Inky Nebula. And from that kind of early period forward, it felt a lot like the Inky Nebula and Ong's Hat material were focused on, it was a lot like a cult, but in a really contradictory way. It was a cult that wanted people who could actually think and had their own mind and were intelligent enough to kind of discern what's real and what isn't. That was actually kind of at the core of it. And going through the material, it kind of presented you with these challenges. Like, I'm going to tell you a piece of information, and your job is to find out whether this is true or false. and it would kind of keep leading you through this rabbit hole. And I got infatuated with it and really interested in it and trying to figure out, were the twins at Princeton really doing this research, and were all these things real? And because of that, I started a forum on the Dark Planet website. A bunch of people got involved in a really early iteration of that website. There was a pretty active and healthy group of people researching Ong's hat, coming down pretty hard on Joseph with stuff that they had found or didn't find. And we were all just trying to get to the bottom of this thing. Like, what is this weird thing talking about parallel dimensions and quantum tantra, egg travel to parallel Earths? And, what does it all mean? And what does it all, what's the justification for it existing? And I think it was a pretty common experience for everybody that went through that journey. And this is what made it so weird, to have these deep and profound synchronicities. And the more you looked into it, the more these synchronicities tended to happen. And a lot of them were a little bit inconsequential. It would be something that, maybe somebody wouldn't even notice, and if they were just kind of in their normal psychological state. But because you're looking into this material, you just start picking them out. You guys are pretty familiar with this, I know, because you talk about synchros all the time on Grimerica.
Yeah.
And once you're tuned into synchronicity, you find many, many more, and they kind of cascade, and they build upon themselves. And this material did that in a really profound way for a lot of people. And so when coming back this many years later and then talking to Joseph about it, that's what I keep trying to drill down into, is why that happened. Because what he did with kind of co-creating this material was find a means to bring this stuff to the surface and try to pick it apart. Why are we starting to create synchronicity? Why all of a sudden, with some of this fictional material, is the fiction becoming real in some really weird ways? Why is that happening? That's what fascinates me. It still fascinates me because I don't think we've really discussed it.
Because it's all a simulation. That's why.
And when you do this kind of stuff, you're tapping into it or something like that, or what?
Yeah, no, I haven't figured out exactly how it works yet, because I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I'm just a podcaster. But it would seem to be, I don't know. It seems more and more like when you see things like the Fibonacci sequence and sacred geometry and the fractal stuff, it's just gets pretty hard to. Sometimes I think it's like maybe all the cells in the body, or all the atoms, or all the molecules. Like, I wonder if they need some sort of meaningful existence to keep doing what they got to do to keep me going every day. I wonder if the cells in my hand are going to work in the morning and just fucking grinding it out just to, maybe the world works like that fractally, and we're just, inside some cells of some bigger organism, or maybe it's the hive thing, or maybe it's just like a simulation, and that's straight up. You can, because it seems like you say you can start to affect this, and you can start to move it around and affect it, and I don't know.
Well, it reminds me of the Hellier. I don't know if you guys have heard of that Hellier documentary that just came out. It's 4 or 5 parts of these paranormal investigators investigating the Kentucky Goblins, and it's a really good series. Each one's about an hour long, and it's not like your normal sort of ghost hunting show or whatever, but it's all about the synchronicities that start happening along this journey of trying to hunt down these stories of the Kentucky Goblins and finding them and all that. And it's just like what you guys are talking about. All kinds of crazy stuff starts happening.
You know which one got me going is the speed of light in meters per second is the exact, if you could take that 9 numbers, it's the exact same number as the latitude of the Pyramid of Egypt. If you take that down to the decimal points, and it's that's fucking crazy. And is that the Illuminati, or do they build? Well, there was no fucking latitude when they built those pyramids. I don't care if it was 5,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago, or did we just line our thing up to that somehow, or is it just this thing's going to come up with a number for you? So here's the number, and it's oh shit, I already used that number. Which kind of gets into that, when you cut into shit, it doesn't exist until you do it. Like the inside of the tree, or doesn't exist until I cut into the tree, because it doesn't want to waste the memory. And it's sort of the same thing. It's like, hey, I need a number. Who the fuck is ever going to notice if I grab the number from here and throw it here? And we're just at this level where we got these freaks that are just grinding it out on YouTube and Google Earth and finding these crazy things. And the AI is just like, oh, fuck. We're going to break the simulation. Sometimes it seems too much. I was actually having the conversation with my wife last week, and it was just like, I was watching one of those documentaries by, I think it's Scott Onstott, and we're going to have him on the show here in a couple of weeks. And it was just like, he goes through these crazy number coincidences, and I don't know, man. I was like, it makes me think it's all, I don't know if that implies more divine creation or simulation or what, but something is going on there. I don't know. I don't think it's that the pyramid was built there on purpose. I don't think that's a possibility. It just seems
it's higher than that.
It's high level, high level synchronicity.
Yeah. You got any thoughts on that, Joseph?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I come from a perspective that I'm very, very deeply Jungian in a lot of ways. And so I think that everything that we know, everything that can be known, is actually known by us already on some level. Since there is no separation between what's called me and the universe, there is a word and a concept that I use called me that helps me in the navigation of space and time. But sometimes I forget that it's a construct, and we all do. My hand implies that it's separate from me, but it's not. It's part of me. You can say the same thing about the universe. I'm not in the universe. I am the universe as much as you are the universe. And so the idea that somebody could come up with something that is a universal constant is not mind-bending, really. When you think about it, it's almost inevitable, because it's not so much that we as humans have to come up with new things. Say we have to remember the things that we've forgotten, because we already know them all. It's just that we have this amnesia called civilization that we've layered upon ourselves, and it's getting deeper and heavier every day. That kind of separates us from nature. And like, I'm not saying it's all bad. Like I said, it's important to keep your wits about you and not be a puddle of jelly. If you're in the Alaskan wilderness, which I go to a lot, that wouldn't do me any good at all, and I'd be bear food very quickly if I did not keep my wits about me and understand that there's this thing here and that doesn't want to get eaten. There's that thing out there that's much bigger that wants to eat, or there's this mountain that I'm climbing that I want to maintain a relationship to gravitationally, and I don't want to fall off this mountain and maintain or start another relationship to the ground gravitationally, which could be fatal. Because I know it's all ego and all of that, but I'm kind of fond of my life right now. So yeah, I mean, those are the things. They sound like pot dreams that we all just hit the bong really heavy and we're sitting here talking about these kind of things, but they are realities of a sort that we have to deal with on some level of our day-to-day life. How much we deal with is by choice. And how much of that can be opened up to an experience is what I was trying to get at. I think Denny is as an experiencer, that's why I like him here. And also he's a great guy. But the thing that he brings to the table there is something that I was trying to construct in a way, which was, I was thinking this is before Google, right? Remember, this was the early days of the internet where there was a couple of search engines and they weren't that good. Yahoo was actually something that was human curated at the time. Webcrawler was, so there was not a lot of SEO, as you could call it, what you would call now search engine optimization that was going on. However, I looked at the internet itself as a giant informational field, and being that I was very much into what's called relational databases at the time, which is how does this word or this piece of information relate to that word or that piece of information through metadata, I started to construct Ong's hat very much like that, so that people would have experiences like Denny had, where either I placed things in certain places. I didn't know about the website. I don't know about the website he's talking about, or I aligned the story in such a way that people would pick it up. And that's mostly what happened. It wasn't me doing it. It was other people kind of coming across it because I'd kind of laid it in their path. And then, of course, picking it up and signal boosting it, which then built this network that then like became a decentralized network where you could start tripping through all this stuff, and you would eventually or could eventually run across Ong's hat. And the opening paragraph on Ong's hat was, "You've been searching for us without knowing it." That's the first sentence you read on the website. It's the first sentence you read in the catalog, and that hit a lot of people really hard because they felt like, just like Denny, that they had kind of serendipitously tripped into this through synchronicities, and then there was this message when you land that says, "You've been searching for us without knowing it, but here you are. We've been waiting for you." And I think that's where he got the idea that it kind of had a cult feel to it. But one of the things that I always said is that it would never ever be used for cult, to form a cult. I want to make sure of that because I despise cults on all levels, because it's groupthink and I hate groupthink. But the whole thing was like kind of like, welcome, you found the others, because Terence McKenna was really big at that time, and one of the things he was going around saying at the time was, find the others, and that is important in this day and time that we live in, where technology has essentially monasticized us, where we're all sitting in our little cubicles talking to each other through cameras, and nobody's sitting together in a room anymore having these conversations, and you're not getting facial expressions half the time. Definitely with email, you don't get it. You're missing tonal inflection with language. There's like all this human experience is getting cut off. And essentially, figuratively speaking, we're kind of in the matrix. We're in the pods, right? We kind of are. We're all sitting in our little living rooms talking at each other, but we don't see people really talking to each other and having learned experiences together. And at the time, I was still convinced that the internet could facilitate that. I'm not as convinced anymore, but I definitely tried.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the Matrix. Like finding the Ong's hat and Enki Nebula story felt very much like you were being drawn through a narrative by Orpheus. Anybody that has the time to go look at this story, dig into it a bit. Once you go down that rabbit hole, it's even knowing that large portions of it were manufactured to elicit a certain kind of response. It's still super fascinating. You're going to notice an increase in synchronicities. You're going to start questioning the malleability of reality. And you're going to get into things like the Mandela effect. And
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it all kind of ties in. It's like, I was saying earlier to Joseph, one of the things in the Mandela effect is called a flip flop.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I knew you had a term for it. I was trying to remember. We talked a little while back about that, and I wanted to get you to talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Yeah. So at the base of it, it's really just you have a you have a memory of a thing, and everybody agrees to that thing. So let's say. The Pepsi logo, we all have a certain memory of it being a certain way. Okay. And then there's somebody comes online and says, well, it's changed. The swirl goes left instead of right. And so we all go and look at it. All of us with consensus go look at the new version of this logo. And we go, oh, okay, that's weird. I must have misremembered that. And then because you had that observation of that thing, a week later, somebody comes online and says, guess what, guys? It's flipped back to facing the other direction. And then we all go back and we look at that and go, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Like, how is it possible that I observed a thing that was one way, it flipped to another way, and then it flipped back to the original state? And that this occurs a lot in the Mandela effect. And when you have one of these occurrences personally, like this is part of your experience, you're never going to question whether or not the Mandela effect is real or not. The Mandela effect is a bad term for a very complex phenomenon. Like it because it ties into so many other things, I think, and it has to do with the malleability of reality. Reality is not as fixed and constant as you think it is. And when we come together and we think about a thing, we make it real. Magically, we collectively make that thing real. And this does lend some weird credence to simulation theory and a bunch of other stuff. But maybe it's explainable in a more mystical way. But it's going to land on one of those two really weird sides, right?
Do you have any examples, other examples of that? Because I think you mentioned a couple to me that were, I had never heard of the flip-flop part of the Mandela effect. I just know that there's that one dimension of it where, like the Berenstein Bears ones is the best example for me, because I remember it as EIN, not AIN. But do you have any other real examples of the flip-flop where people are actually seeing it, in a group setting, like you said?
Yes. So so most people experience the Mandela effect in the common way, which is they have a collective memory of a thing being one. Berenstein Bears is a great example. Most people remember it Berenstein when it's actually Berenstain. That's kind of the common, and you could, do about Kit Kat is another one. People
What's
think
the
of
Kit Kat one?
Kit Kat logo, is there a dash between Kit and Kat? A lot of people remember, yes, there was a dash between Kit and Kat. There's no dash. Never has been. Another good one is you have to be, a lot of these you have to be old enough to remember, but one is Moonraker, with James Bond, Moonraker, and Dolly, and Jaws. Jaws was one of the characters with the braces in his mouth, right? And with the big gag in that movie was Jaws looks to Dolly, who's this beautiful blonde girl, and he smiles at her, and you see his big bracy mouth, and then she smiles back, and she's got braces, and then they form a bond and a connection over that gag, right? But that never happened. She doesn't have braces. She's got full pearly white teeth, right? Okay, and so that blows a lot of people's minds because they have a distinct memory of her smiling with braces.
I remember that.
Never happened.
Braces?
Doesn't exist. Go back and rent the movie on VHS and you'll see she never had braces. So those are the common experiences for Mandela effect. But what really tips this over into like weird land, the most famous example, and because I experienced this, as did a number of other people, probably in the hundreds of thousands, I'm guessing, it was Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, that movie where he goes to the moon.
I've seen it a bunch of times. This will be great. I'm going to test this.
Yeah. So the famous line is, sorry, now I'm stumbling because I'm on a radio show. Houston, we've had a problem, right? That's what everybody remembers, and that's fine. Somebody came on and said that's flipped around. It's no longer Houston, we've had a problem. It's Houston, we have I'm already reversing this because it gets confused. So everybody remembers Houston, we have a problem. A problem. Like it is happening right now, a problem. Somebody came online and said it's changed to Houston, we've had a problem. We have had a problem in past tense. So everybody's going, well, I don't remember it that way. They look at the clip. A lot of people pulled up DVDs. There's actually on YouTube, you can look up people pulling out their DVDs and putting it in their Blu-ray player and watching it. They're going, it was never we've had a problem. It was always we had a problem. Or we have a problem.
I thought it was we've got a problem.
So some people, there was a consensus reality that it was Houston, we have a problem. Everybody watches this clip and suddenly it's changed to we've had a problem past tense. And so everybody goes, oh, okay, well, it's just fuzzy memory bullshit. Like obviously I'm not remembering this the right way. A couple weeks goes by and it's flipped back. Okay, so everybody watched it on their physical DVD and it was Houston, we've had a problem past tense. And then now suddenly it's Houston, we have a problem, present tense. And brains melt. And I experienced that one firsthand. And so when I relate it back to Ong's Hat and the Inky Nebula, it tripped me back into the mode of like, well, a lot of that material was really playing with how malleable reality actually is based on a group agreement about how a thing is. So if there's a fact that we all agree with, that's what it will be. And then if something shifts that, it won't be that anymore. And so a lot of the information that Joseph was talking about at the time played with those concepts a lot. And that's why it's kind of a weird, mystical, magical, synthetic, created reality weird thing. And I have a big problem talking about the Ink Nebula with people when I try to explain what it was, because the depth of what it was so incredibly deep, and Joseph was pulling from so many different sources that it's really hard to nutshell this entire topic. And so what typically happens is we come on and we talk about what that whole thing was back in the 90s, and people come away going, what the fuck was that guy talking about? This is so many layers of conspiracy theory that I can't even wrap my brain around it. But at the end of it, it's like it really centers around how fluid reality actually is, which is the most interesting thing about it.
Yeah. Joseph?
Yeah, I think he summed it up. Excuse me. One of the things I would say is there was a lot of naivete in my approach. I never, for example, I thought I was creating a new form of narrative delivery that incorporated more. In fact, I called it living book process. I don't know if you remember that, Denny, but that's what I called it. And then later, it was picked up by Hollywood of all places and kind of commodified into alternate reality gaming, the first layer. Luckily, there was a grassroots movement that grew up around that as well, that I think put out a lot of really cool free stuff that I thought was interesting. And then the third part I never saw coming, which is the weaponizing of it. So now you see some conspiracy theories out there that really, from the outside, look like an ARG. That are, I'm not sure what their goals are other than some sort of propaganda, and sometimes agitprop, I think, is to agitate certain people into action for certain reasons that I don't necessarily always know, and I don't even really want to know about. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it like that. I was thinking about naming some things, but I don't think I'm going to.
Can you just name some things where you think that, like I'm trying to tease apart the ARG versus like a normal conspiracy. So, what are some examples of like what Hollywood have picked up? You don't have to get too controversial on the agitprop stuff, but what about just ARGs for people that aren't familiar with?
Oh well, the kind of the first. Well, there was a community of people. Well, first of all, let me roll this back. So as I was winding up Ong's Hat in 2001, I decided that I was going to call a halt to the game, because as Denny could testify, there was a couple of people, wasn't a lot, but it was very vocal minority of people that had taken this all way too seriously.
Yeah.
And so I decided to roll it down and once again point out that there was a CD-ROM that I had put out. There was an interactive ebook. And on that CD-ROM, there had always been this thing called the secret document, which wasn't a secret and it wasn't hard to find, but it was there, and it basically stated the goals of what it was I was doing and why I was doing it. So that if anybody ever said, well, you didn't tell me this was a game, I'd be like, it's right there. Like, you need to be told for one reason, for one thing, and the other thing is like, it's right there. So I, again, made this very apparent to everybody. There's this document in the CD-ROM. If you didn't find it, here it is. And then let's give everybody a little time to cool off, because some people decided to get hot about it. And then let's have a conversation about why did people believe this and and it doesn't delegitimize the experiences. In fact, I think it makes it very interesting to talk about. It gives us a framework, a common framework, so we can talk about it. And about that time, I was contacted by Electronic Arts, EA, and they were doing something called Majestic. And it was, for all intents and purposes, a conspiracy theory-oriented alternate reality game. It really, I would think, would be the first one outside of Ong's Hat. And it was commercial. And I was on the beta team because they wanted me there. And they were eventually going to actually use Ong's Hat material in this game. The game got called off really quickly towards the end of 2001 because of 9/11. And because the material included some information about a terrorist group bombing buildings, and I don't know how old you guys are, but if you can remember that right after 9/11, it was a chilling effect on anything that could be controversial in that arena at all was just silenced.
Yeah.
And it was done by consensus. I don't think the government was going around stomping on everybody's head. It was just there was a consensus of it's in bad taste. We just don't talk about that kind of stuff right now. And I get it.
I don't know. I don't know about that because you know what? I watched Zeitgeist. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the beginning of it the other day. And Zeitgeist, you know, it's old and it's kind of an entry level for a lot of people a long time ago. But you know what's interesting about Zeitgeist is the beginning is like CNN, Fox, CBS, all the news networks going off about hearing bombs and hearing explosions, and it's like, you know, all that stuff. You forget that all that stuff was on the news for a couple of days.
Yeah, it was.
And then it was like, so was it like, did I don't know. It almost seems to me like it was like, listen, motherfuckers, we're not talking like that anymore.
No, I mean, at least not for the gaming community. The gaming community was like, this is some serious stuff. The nation needs time to grieve, and we shouldn't be providing this kind of stuff as entertainment.
Right.
I think it was out of respect. I really do.
Yeah.
I know the internal conversations that I was part of at EA. Go ahead. Denny?
Oh, I was just going to say, just really quickly, I played Majestic. It was so much fun because they would actually phone you, like because you had to give personal details and your phone number and stuff at home, and they would phone you in the middle of the night, and you get like this deep throat guy talking to you, giving you information on the next thing you have to do in the game. It was so much fun. Like nothing broke through kind of the barriers like that game did, and really hasn't since. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and the timing was unfortunate because it was. I mean, some of the stuff that was coming down the line was very cool because I was on the back end of it, and unfortunately, it got cut short. But what I met in doing the beta, the back end of that game, was this whole community, including people like the late Dave Sobolski, who I became very good friends with, of people that were creating grassroots ARGs because Dave had witnessed the entire Ong's Hat thing and said, I want to do this as an art form, and started doing it. And there was like all these communities that sprung up. Like there was a forum called Collective Detective. There was one called Unfiction. And it's where ARGs came from. And they were not commercial. They were completely grassroots, community driven, highly, very smart participants, people that were working together in groups, which I found very encouraging because it kind of was pulling people back together into groups and learning how to work together to solve things, which I thought was a great exercise. And then Steven Spielberg, when he came out with when he picked up Stanley Kubrick's movie AI and did a Steven Spielberg movie, they launched something called The Beast, which was the first commercial ARG that was attached to a Hollywood property, and that was wildly successful. And soon afterwards, I think Halo launched I Love Bees.
Yeah, Bungie did that, and that was based off of the stuff that you did too.
Yeah, and I didn't know how to feel about that. I definitely didn't like the Spielberg thing because I don't like him as a director. I think he's a hack, but that's just my opinion. The Bungie thing I thought was cool. There was some cool stuff that went down with that, but then the success of those two things, it just all of a sudden, boom, it blew up. And Dave and I were getting phone calls left and right because Dave had done this thing called Change Agents, which was really good. And then he started working on a kind of a, what would you call it? Did you do Chasing the Wish at all, Denny? It was.
No, I remember it, but I didn't do it.
It was kind of a chapter 2 to Ong's Hat. It started in Ong's Hat, and then it kind of took off from there and went on its own story. I really liked it. I participated in it. I played a role in it. I actually met some people that if they found a certain secret in that game, they were told a time and place to meet me at a restaurant in Los Angeles, where I came in all paranoid and sweaty and had a very uncomfortable meal with them and left them with a signed copy of the Ong's Hat book. And then I'd already made arrangements with the owner of the sushi restaurant. I ran out the back through the kitchen and out the back door and left the guy sitting there, but I paid the bill.
Isn't that the same story where they chased you home because they were trying to figure out if it was real or not?
Yeah, that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that story on one of the audio clips I listened to. It was pretty funny.
But where we were going with this was it suddenly Dave and I were getting all these phone calls from like CAA, wanted to represent us, and people that wanted us to do that thing. And I heard that more times than not. Can you do that thing that you've done before, that thing that you did for our movie launch, for our toys, for our blah, blah, blah. And I finally I did one with Dave, which was a lot of fun. I played some roles in Art of the Heist for Audi, and it's where somebody won an Audi, and I thought that was cool. But then I didn't want to do it anymore. It felt too much like prostitution to me, and so I stopped doing it. I just started hanging up on these people, and then after a while, I started saying something nasty and then hanging up. But
was that after the 3-letter agencies got asked you?
No, I mean they never actually hit me up. The only people that hit me up was the Army, or no, the Navy hit me up, and they wanted to talk to me about synchronicity induction. And I just like hung the phone up. I'm like, my mind was blown. I'm like, why is the Navy interested? But if you guys,
what's synchronicity
Google,
induction? I'm interested.
Well, they wanted to know if there was any way that they could utilize synchronicity to predict where torpedoes were going to go.
I like that you'll tell me, but that you won't tell the U.S. Navy.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Well, no, that's what they were asking me, is if there was any, if I could find any use case for this, and I just said, I don't want to work with you guys, and I don't even know what you're talking about, and I don't to this day. I don't know how those two would fit together, but the fact that they're interested in it didn't make sense to me at the time. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, the Army did fund remote viewing for years and years, right? So okay, I guess.
Well, I think, couldn't it be the same premise as like no one used to be able to throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, and then one guy did, and now, every team's got a couple pitchers that can throw it 105.
Yeah.
So, if you can start, if you can just, everyone on the boat thinks that torpedo is going to hit that other submarine, and that does, and then eventually it just does it all the time.
Consensus reality. Yeah.
The way they explained it to me is they were thinking more about the mathematics had I come up with some sort of algorithm that would allow me to use synchronicity in the game. They had been observing Ong's hat. I did see some creepy stuff in the weblogs over the years, but I mean, I thought maybe it was just some bored technician, but I think that they had been observing it as a phenomena. I started this out by saying I was amazingly naive. I had no idea that this would get on the radar, no pun intended, of somebody like the Navy or the Army or the DoD, which eventually did come knocking. And I said, absolutely not. But yeah, I mean, there was even, I think DARPA put out an RFI for help in designing ARGs for doing some sort of training, like putting people into situational training and using ARGs to do it because of the immersive belief system, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And all this, I never saw any of this coming. I never saw the weaponization of it. I thought that I was creating an art form, not weapons, definitely not propaganda tools, but yeah, unfortunately the same things that can be used for good can be used for not so good.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. It kind of leads into a question I wanted to ask you guys about any reservations on the fictional aspects of this conspiracy, especially now that conspiracies have been weaponized. I mean, we have people believing that, maybe some people believing that this is a real thing and they're chasing it down, but yet it's been some of it's been fabricated. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it myself. I'm not, Darren wanted to start faking crop circles for a while there, and I was like, no, that's not.
I'm still going to do that. Oh, we weren't supposed to talk about that. Well, here's my thing. I just want to do a crop circle because I think something crazy will happen if I make one. That's it. We interviewed a circle maker. We interviewed a circle maker. We interviewed a circle maker. That's where I got the idea.
Yeah.
I just happened to do it under a flight pass so I could see if it'll go in the paper.
I wish I could remember the name of the documentary, but there was you may have seen it, Graham. It was about one of the prominent circle researchers and how much he was hounded by the government in the UK during his research. It was really interesting because it kind of crossed over into, yes, there's groups that do this thing as an art form, but there's also this legitimate phenomenon that it is kind of being usurped by this other stuff, like being clouded. The reality of it is being clouded by this other agenda, which is also real. And this is what makes it, I think, so much mushy, because yes, there's a legitimate group of people that do circles as an art form, but there's also an underlying phenomenon that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I wonder, back to the torpedoes. I wonder.
Well,
So,
I want to get back to my question.
if you get
too,
a couple
eventually,
subs under the water, I wonder now, does the entire world need to influence that reality, or are they now put into some sort of bubble where it's only the people on the 2 subs that are affecting that reality? Like, I wonder if it fragments off like that.
Splintered. Yeah.
If it
I think
was,
it's splinters, Graham.
yeah, well, if it was a simulation, you could see it happen that way. Like, maybe then if you get by yourself in a room and no one else in the world's there, you could start like just manifesting hamburgers.
It does feel like if you have enough people believing in a certain aspect of reality, it becomes so. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like that Star Trek thing. Where was it like Star Trek predicting the future, or was it Star Trek influencing engineers that were going to build all that stuff, or did it actually just influence the reality of the people watching it to that we just manifested it?
I know. I was
And
wondering,
I would've always
I
thought-
was wondering if that happened in this thing. Maybe Joseph was picking up on stuff that was really happening in Ong's hat.
No, I've changed my stance on that in 5 years and 300 podcasts for sure.
Well, that so like the do you guys remember the Lone Gunman, the X-Files spinoff?
Mm-hmm.
And they did that episode that was basically play by play 9/11. Like it ran exactly as 9/11 ended up happening, which was it was filmed before 9/11 happened.
Was
And
that
how
the drill?
eerie and spooky that was, and it ended up, the
Yeah.
show was canceled. But so that's an interesting component to what I feel like some of the aspects of the Inky Nebula and Ong's hat touched on enough real things that it kind of started to spawn real things as a result. Is that not true, Joseph?
Yeah, I mean, there's a method there. You can read Harold Garfinkel's Studies in Ethnomethodology, and there's something called the breaching experiment, where you make up something and try to get people to believe it, but you make it more believable by anchoring it, as it's called, with true, real life, verifiable facts. So you tie like just enough real things into it, so that a cursory look over is like, well, yeah, well, this part's real, this part's real. So these parts I'm not sure about, maybe they're real. And so once you've done that, you've kind of opened the door to people walking in and doing what's called suspension of disbelief, in the gaming world and in the acting world. And literally when you go see a movie, you do that. When you sit in the audience at a theater, you're suspending your disbelief, or at least I hope you are, for 90 minutes. Or if you're not having a very enjoyable movie experience. But I mean, that's how you can go to a movie. Like, for example, when I went to see Infinity Wars, when I walked out of that theater, I saw people that were ashen, like people that were just like white-faced, drawn looks because they'd watched all their superheroes die. I was stunned. I was like, wow, these people are really feeling this. And it's because of suspension of disbelief. I mean, those were not CGI animations up there on the screen. Those were the superheroes that they grew up reading in the comic books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And on a Jungian level, they're archetypal, so they are dead, at least for now, until April. They are dead to those people. There was an archetype that was killed in front of them that they're not sure is going to come back, because nobody's quite sure who's coming back and who's not. So, I mean, Marvel Film Studios, I think that's what, Disney now. Yeah, they definitely played with that a lot, because they had a story and a bunch of archetypes that a lot of us grew up with. I mean, I'll admit, Amazing Spider-Man and Captain America was what I read growing up. I was a Marvel kid. I did not like DC at all, until much later when Batman got dark again. But yeah, I mean, you can do some interesting things as long as you have people's beliefs and their emotions tied up into it, when in fact they're doing it. And I know this sounds manipulative, but it's not. As long as it's consensual and everybody says this is what we're doing, when it gets to the point where people stop saying that, that's when you need to pull the plug on your project.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is there any reservations about propagating a partly fake conspiracy and having some people believe in that?
If I had to do it like today, I would not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of
there was a window.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, I think so.
Is there any place where I could go like try one of these like ARGs today? Is there anything like that exists, kind of like what you built going on today?
There's a grassroots community on Reddit, Reddit RARG, uppercase letters, that there's pretty much a couple a day that people are launching, and they're all like homemade grassroots. Some of them are horrible. Some of them are really, really good.
That's kind of what the escape rooms came into in a way. Like now that's kind of what an ARG is.
Well, an ARG
pasta as well.
Yeah,
Sorry.
creepypasta. I mean, and Darren, you probably appreciate this. I mean, a lot of ARGs are very much like D&D. They're like role playing games that just kind of keep running forever, and there's a kind of much bigger party that's dealing with the challenges.
I don't appreciate that at all. I was actually this morning just complaining. Actually, I think it was yesterday morning. I was complaining to Adam that because I was like, "Who won these guys every Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday they play D&D."
It's only Monday.
And on Tuesday, he's like, "Oh yeah, last night was D&D night," and I'm like, "Who won?" And he's like, "Well, D&D's not really something you win." And I'm like, well, that would just drive me crazy. Like, someone needs to win, someone needs to be dying, I just can't, it was not just.
Is that when then he said he didn't perform very well or something like that afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he
was talking about D&D. I get it.
Now he finally gets the text.
That makes more sense. That makes more sense than what I thought he was saying. Huh.
Well, see, you probably wouldn't have liked Ong's Hat because it was designed to be what's called an infinite game, which means there was no zero-sum thinking supposedly attached to it.
But would I know that going into it?
Yeah,
No.
you would figure it out because there is no conclusion. There's no solve to anything.
Right.
There's infinite solves.
Yeah.
There's also a counter conspiracy, just so it's on the table, that Joseph is telling us a big lie right now, and that there really is travel ashrams, and there really is a parallel Earth where people are traveling to. See, now he's getting mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna get an MIB visit in the middle of the night, buddy.
But going back into some of that, a part of what was interesting with the story unraveling was there was, a sizable group within that was studying Ong's Hat, that was hyper obsessed with it. Joseph touched on it a little bit, but some people were just like absolutely bonkers crazy to the point where they were stalking Joseph and everybody kind of who was involved on the periphery of it. Some people just completely lost their minds with it, which is true of most modern day conspiracies. And but it's because they didn't actually know it was an ARG because it was the first, which was interesting. Yeah,
that's what's interesting. I'm thinking about some of the contemporary conspiracies. Like, and I don't, I'm not trying to push you to name anything, Joseph, but when you mentioned weaponized conspiracies and some of the stuff that you didn't really want to talk about, I mean, what comes to mind for me is some of the more extreme ones like flat Earth and stuff like that just seem like they're more of a psyop than an actual conspiracy. Like, is that happening? Do you think at the level now? I mean, like, look what's happening these days with the term conspiracy and how it's just been. I mean, it's all over the place, and there's the mainstream media is the first one to lie about stuff and do fake news, and yet they want to label everybody else as a conspiracy theorist. I mean, is there some of this intentional stuff going on?
Let's find a couple things here. Number one, I kept information online at all times during the game that this was a game, and then when I realized that people were just being lazy or incomplete or whatever, or didn't want to look, I closed the game down, and then I made very, very, very certain that people like, this is what we did, and we're done.
Yeah.
I had not seen some of these other people, like any flat earthers or reptilian shape-shifting overlord people or any of these other people come clean on the fact that they're selling a load of horse shit.
Yeah.
So when I see that, then we can have the conversation of like, was it an ARG?
Right.
I don't think for them it's an ARG. I think for them it's a grift. Because I honestly don't believe very many of those people actually believe. Well, actually, I have inside information that some of them don't. But again, not going to name names because these people get ugly when you threaten their little
specific to flat Earth or specific to other ones.
No, just conspiracy theory in general.
Yeah.
and so I don't see the flat Earth as an ARG. What I see resembling an ARG, but again, still not declaring itself as such, would be something like Pizzagate, QAnon. I have to wonder about those things because they definitely resemble an ARG to me, except I don't see that they're constructed for the purpose of having fun.
Yeah, there's like in speaking with you about that earlier, it feels like a lot of that stuff there's this weird organic ARG that happens when like minds come together and they're like, this is my weird theory and this is your weird theory. Let's mash them together and let's keep growing this organically. And they're basically creating fiction with bits of truth and a lot of fake narrative, because initially it's kind of a mind game to play with each other, right? So it feels like some of the modern day conspiracies that have spun out of control really did start as an ARG. They didn't know they were creating that initially. It's kind of the groupthink created an ARG.
Yeah, what do you think? A possibility.
Yeah. The QAnons are great.
I tend to look at all that stuff and just wonder if there wasn't some sort of, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where I think it's a little more sophisticated than it was for us in the 90s and in the early, 2000, 2001, but like we'll call it the late 90s. I mean, remember the time, at that time, X-Files was on television. It was very popular, if not the most popular thing on television. Art Bell was still doing what he did and like pulling in like 20 million people a night worldwide.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were riding the crest of that wave, and that was not intentional. It just kind of synchronistically happened while what we were doing happened. So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, I don't know that definitely Pizzagate was constructed with bad intentions, and it may have organically arisen, but I don't think that there was ever anybody in the beginning of this whole thing that really believed some of the stuff they were saying. I really don't. They couldn't. I mean, do you think they could?
There's no evidence on that one, on Pizzagate.
Yeah.
I think there was evidence on Pizzagate, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to ignore all the things that they found on that. Personally, that's what my thought is.
Yeah, but to me, it's more centrist than that. It's like, yes, there were some things, but a lot of, like, half of it was held up by theory, and half of it, and I mean, I'm even saying half of it might be a bit liberal to say that there was half truth there. There was definitely some weird shit, and I think we'd all be lying to ourselves if we didn't think the elite were doing some weird, bizarre bullshit. But it feels like a lot of these things. It feels like a lot of these things spiral out of control because we tell a self-reinforcing story to ourselves, right?
Yeah, I feel like those things are organic to start, and then they become co-opted, or they become people enter that don't believe, and they spread disinformation or make it difficult for people to tease out the real from the fake. It's almost like it starts out like an organic investigation, then turns into an ARG from some external influence.
We built giant echo chambers. That's not helping.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I would say that they might start out as organic investigations, and then they're noticed by people who are very good at moving narratives in directions that make them weaponized. And I think it got co-opted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was colonized by people that, and I take it back. The people that initially probably started talking about Pizzagate initially in the early days probably were, legitimately looking into something that interested them that they had noticed. And then from there, I think it got noticed by the wrong people who then co-opted it and started driving it and weaponizing it for other purposes. And I think QAnon to me struck me as like weaponized from day one, but that's just my spidey sense telling me that.
I heard you. There's a lot asked you if you're Q.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of people have.
Are you Q? if you're Q, you just gotta,
Absolutely
this is the place. This is the place to come out.
This would be huge for us. If you're Q, this is fucking ground.
I wish I could help you guys.
Let's throw Q in the title anyway. I think we got Q. We got Q.
We got it.
We got Q.
It's real.
There's lots lots of conspiracy about Q being, whether it's user curated information or whether it's an AI that's been programmed to spit out and regurgitate information. That's an interesting one. I actually also think that John Titor and the time travel hoax, I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
Is another one that fits into the kind of classic ARG kind of structure where there's a lot of really interesting truth to some of the things being said and a lot of speculation on where things are going to go in the future. And actually, it's still quite fascinating. Some of the things that were said in the John Titor time travel case that still line up and have really good kind of foresight into where things were going early in the Art Bell days. Anyways, that one reminds me a lot of how Angshat and the Ink were kind of formed, and like that was another one that kind of spiraled out from that structure.
So what are some examples of how Q is weaponized? Do you think?
No, it weaponized, doesn't, when I say weaponized, I don't always necessarily mean some sort of dichotomy of good versus evil. I just mean that it's being utilized to drive a narrative for one group of people against another group of people.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's kind of what I thought you meant. Yeah.
And it seems like from the time it showed up, that's what its intention was to drive some narrative that, villainized one group of people and heroized another group of people, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You don't think it's a patriot? You don't think it's Trump or the other guy or one of the other guys that's with Trump flying around? You don't think there's any, do you give any credence to that?
I don't know.
Is it you?
Because QAnon said some crazy shit. Like some of it is, again, some
I
of it
don't
is
follow it. I got to be honest. I followed it for the first month or two, and for the first 3 months, I was all in, then I was all out, and I just got exhausted and fucking quit watching everything.
I wanted to mention before we run out of time and stuff that you taught, like there's a couple different things you guys wanted to mention or talk about that are sort of a really interesting part of this whole thing. And I just want to make sure you guys got those points across, or did we touch on them?
Yeah, for me, I just wanted. I was less interested in talking about the controversial parts of all of this, and I just really wanted to, for once, talk about why it was constructed and some of how it was constructed. Because, in 2 interviews that I've done recently, and by the way, this is absolutely my last interview. The reason I say that is I'd done all these other interviews by the end of last year, and then they just came out this year.
Okay.
And then Denny asked me to do this show, and I said yes because Denny asked me.
Yeah.
So
thanks, guys.
That's why you guys get the last
Denny.
word.
Awesome.
We get the last interview with Q.
There's one more that I did in December that's still in editing, and that's J.G. Michael's Parallax Views, but that's already in the can, so that was done in December. I think it's coming out sometime in March. And then I'm done talking about this because, as I said to the last 2 people, I'm just I've said everything I want to say. Unfortunately, thankfully, you guys are just going to let this fly, and that's cool. So I got to say some things that I said before that didn't make the cut.
Yeah. There is no cut here.
All right, I know. I'm going to cut this.
They're more interested in the spectacular parts of the story, and the controversial parts and the sexy parts and the clickbait, so to speak. I'm not trying to drag anybody down. I think both Salon and Jed did a great job with the Gizmodo piece as well. But they're time constrained and they're word constrained, and so I rambled on for 3 hours about how I built this thing and why I built it, and that's just not. I get it. That's not interesting to most people.
Any plans to build any more?
Absolutely not.
I just want to say that one of the things that doesn't get covered a lot, I actually attribute the Inky Nebula Angshat and going down that rabbit hole of what constitutes stable reality and how much our influence on reality changes reality. That whole thing, it did push me into working in a career in virtual reality and building synthetic realities in a really weird parallel way. And I think for a lot of people that were into this material very early on, it did push them into careers that were kind of unusual. And it was a really fascinating and fun time that probably can't be replicated now with current tech. So if anybody has the time to dig into it and go in the Wayback Machine and dig all this stuff back up, it's a really fascinating story. I'm so glad that Joseph actually put his intention behind it, because it revealed some kind of core truths about how reality functions. And I think that at the end of it, that's what it gave a lot of us, was this little insight into, oh, well, maybe reality is kind of mushy and fuzzy, and we can all have a greater influence on it as a collective.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about how that affected your decisions to get into VR. So go ahead, Joseph.
Oh, I was going to say, if people are really
Yes.
interested in doing a deep dive, the Michael Kinsella book, Legend Tripping Online, The Search for Ong's Hat. There was a college professor that wrote a book that is now used as a textbook in folklore histories, and a couple other. I've been actually asked to a couple universities in the past to speak on multidisciplinarian classes where people are using different types of media to tell stories, and he basically kind of covered that era of history for what happened on the Dark Planet board, which we had no idea we were being observed by a college professor who was writing his thesis on us. But there it is. It's a book now, and actually gets used in the classrooms in the university.
Did this change your guys' opinion on magic at all? Like whether it's ritual magic or other types of magic? And do you have any daily kind of or regular practice in that kind of stuff?
It reinforced mine, but mine was already pretty deep because I'd been doing ritual magic for 20 years, and so I'd already seen a lot of things.
Yeah.
I didn't need a lot of convincing, but it definitely reinforced it that it could be even bigger than some of the things I'd seen. I do less Western Hermetic tradition now, and I actually spent some time in a Zen monastery, and so I practice a form of Zen now. That is magical in its own way.
How much do you contribute? How much do you attribute the synchronicity induction to the magic part of it?
50%.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is it's a big.
Well,
part of
Denny
it.
and I were talking about this earlier. I said what most people miss, and I think what a lot of ritual magicians, Western magicians, miss, especially people from like the Thelemite tradition, miss, and even people from like a tradition like Golden Dawn. What they really miss is that co-creative means that you're only partially responsible for the creation.
Yeah.
There's something on the other side that you're pushing against that's pushing back on you equally.
Yeah.
And you can move it a little bit, but you're not going to alter it completely. You're going to come to some sort of happy medium where it's like, well, I wish it was a little more this way, and then you can do a subtle influence on it, which is what real magic is about. That's why you don't just Harry Potter this into like, from an orange to an apple, or from a grapefruit to a banana. It's more of like, well, can I make this grapefruit less bitter and more enjoyable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right down the middle. It's either we're in a simulation or it's some deeper mystical thing. And I don't know. All I know is when I retire, I'm going to pretend that I'm Gandalf and I'm going to live in the woods and I'm going to have a little shack and I'll be a hermit and it'll be good.
Nice.
Sounds wonderful.
I'll just believe that I have magic.
I just named my latest D&D character Gramdolf. So,
Gramdolf?
Yeah, Gramdolf. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up then. Unless you guys have anything else you want to say. Denny, do you want to mention anything else?
No, just don't believe the hype. Explore deeply.
Yeah.
And Joseph is not Q.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But we'll put links to your guys' websites in the show notes and all that as well. And if people, is there a way to get a hold of you, Joseph, if people want to dig deeper? No? Okay, perfect. This is your last one. Well, really, we do thank you for the awesome conversation and coming here for your last kick of the can here.
It's a
about
great
this.
place to finish off. Yeah.
I actually I've listened to your show before, and as a way of endorsing the show, I am a dyed in the wool dedicated Squatty Potty user because of you guys.
Wow,
awesome.
That's good to know. We make no money from Squatty
I even
Potty.
have the inflatable one that goes with me when I go on vacation.
Oh, that's fantastic.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't
It's
even
all
know
because
that
I heard
existed.
about it on your show.
And the funny thing is, they're probably the closest sponsor we've ever had.
And they won't talk to us.
They won't talk to us.
They won't talk to us. I wanted to have them on the show. They were like, "Oh yeah, well come on, we'll check it out." And then they never heard from them again. I think they blocked us.
As soon as they saw the doobie in the Moai's mouth, they probably said no.
And this is from people who have a squatting unicorn on their commercial. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Hey, they'll be sorry one day. They'll be like, "Hey,
They will.
we could have went on that show." Actually, we'd still have them. We forgive you. We want some free Squatty Potties this time, though. We need it.
Yeah, those things are pricey, aren't they?
Yeah, we need.
Hand them out to guests.
We got a high toilet in the bathroom too. Graham's feet barely reach the ground.
I need extended like 9-inch ones instead of the 6-inch ones.
Yeah.
So.
This is a problem. Yeah.
Well, I actually think they stopped making it, but there was a period of time a couple of years ago where they were making an inflatable one, which is I still have, that was higher than the stool. And so a lot of times I just leave that inflated in my bathroom and use that one instead. And then I can deflate it, put it in my
travel kit
suitcase and take it with me when I go on the road.
Nice.
There you go. Yeah. It's good to wash that once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because sometimes you your
Miss
aim
one.
is not true.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thanks for
Thanks a
coming
lot,
on the
eh?
show. Come back anytime. If you decide to come out of retirement, maybe after the Q thing wraps up, then let us know.
You're gonna get me killed, man.
All right. See you guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Are we out?
We're out.
Bro, and that was our chat with Joseph and Denny. Denny was on right around like 100 and something. I can't remember now.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Kind of a long time ago. 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
What'd you think?
Yeah, it was fun.
I didn't even know
really good.
what I was getting into.
I
There.
know.
That was
That's
great.
fantastic.
Yeah,
I know.
see?
I knew that flew by. Like it really went fast.
These are the best shows. And I'm
Unfortunately,
like,
we got another one coming up.
I thought
here
we
in a
were
couple
talking
minutes.
about virtual reality.
Yeah, no,
And then
no.
right
Well,
at the
it's-
end, you're like, "No, this is something different."
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the whole.
I didn't even know that was the
the
thing.
whole genesis of like sort of some fake sort of games or conspiracies and all that, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. I like it. What was I going to check?
I don't know what you're going to check.
Nah, shit. I lost it.
Yeah, but you can see how it influences Denny's games when anybody's looking for this virtual reality stuff. They got great games at Cloudhead Games. I mean, I didn't want to get into that for this episode. Everybody knows, who he is, but there's some great adventure sort of puzzle style games in there. That, 2 hours in a virtual space is pretty cool.
It was before our numbering.
Yeah.
So it's
Funny how Magic's in there again.
June
Magic's
1st,
and synchronicity.
2014. So it was on our 1 year anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, I think your sister's on that episode too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Head over to grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly today. Or maybe you want to go to grimerica.ca/Stripe or Patreon or whatever. We're not going to be fussy. Just head on over to one of those today and do support the show so that we can exist, because we like existing.
Exactly.
And we know that at least 0.7% of you want us to exist too.
Yeah.
And we
So let's
thank
get
you.
up to 1.7.
Oh,
Yeah,
this guy
double
is
that.
shooting
1.4. Double
this
it.
guy is shooting for the stars.
1.4.
1.4.
14 is my number too.
That's your number, little guy, little furry guy, 1.4 meters tall. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
You're just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. Baby. Headlines they read, doom and gloom, and I drop down on my bended knee and howl at the moon, oh, and I drop down on my bended knee, pinching pennies. I'll be a poet today. Sketch out the scenery, rambling from here and there and back and forth between here and there and back and forth between here and there and to the corner store. The Sunrise Corner Store. The Sunrise Corner Store. Sunrise Corner Store, pinching pennies, la da da da. Whoa, whoa. Ta-da. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best friend. $1 million house up for
show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes. Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
We've been working on the podcast all the live long day. We've been working on the podcast to inform and to entertain. Can't you hear that theme song playing through your headphone cord? Can't you spare a couple dollars to give Grimerica support? Grimerica.ca/support. Grimerica.ca/support. Oh, fee-fi, fiddly-I-O. And tell them Felix sent you there.